I would like, Senator, for you to introduce yourself, and then Representative for you to do so as well.
Okay.
Okay,
Oh.
I'm Senator Sonny Borelli. I'm the Senate Majority Whip. I'm in Legislative District 5, which is Mojave County and La Paz counties. I protect 3/4 of the west coast of Arizona from the left coast of California.
Representative Mark Finchem. I am the chairman of the Federal Relations Committee and serving Legislative District 11.
So I'm Anita Cohen. I'm the editor of Prescott E-News, who is sponsoring this Zoom meeting or podcast. So let me go ahead and ask you the first question.
Okay.
Are there forces at work that are misrepresenting the truth to Arizona voters? And if there are forces at work, is the Arizona legislature at risk of becoming Democrat controlled because of out-of-state dark money?
Oh, yes, on very many levels, even local, statewide fundraising capacities. You have an organization out there that's basically one organization that raises money, which is a political action committee, and they're utilizing a name of another group that, over the same type of issue. But as for a matter of fact, I'll just say it, like the Citizens Defense League is not endorse any candidates. They don't make any contributions. They don't endorse a candidate. They just basically go out and basically tell how voters voted on pro-gun legislation. And then you got another group that's basically co-opting their name, the Citizens Defense League Political Action Committee. They're using their leverage, fundraising leverage, to take out conservative, actually, and proven pro-gun candidates. And then there are many others, and I'm sure Representative Finchem can would love to elaborate even more. You know, there's a lot of misinformation going around out here for the last year about a Senate bill that was through the legislature 3 years ago, the last legislative, actually not legislative session, but last legislature cycle back in 2018, prior to this term. And they're characterizing it as a red flag law. Well, that's nothing further from the truth. It wasn't a red flag law. And the red flag laws that were being, knee-jerk response from other states, like what happened in Florida, our governor decided, well, let's see what Arizona can do. And they actually had a bill that they wanted to pursue. And Senator Steve Smith, which is one of the most pro-gun Second Amendment protectors of the Second Amendment here in the legislature, he jumped on that bill so he could control it. So people need to understand how things work here in the legislature. Sometimes you'll jump on a bill just to be able to kill it. Well, it was the governor insisted that we move forward with this, and so he jumped on the bill. It was Senate Bill 1519. It was heard in committee, passed out of the committee, and then, of course, it naturally got gutted after that because the original bill, and I have it here, it is actually, the original bill is actually 52 pages long. It's extremely thick, 52 pages. Senator Smith got a hold of that bill, controlled it, and was gutted down, completely gutted down to 7 pages. And that's the engrossed version. So people really need to go on to the Arizona Legislative website and actually pull up the legislation. The original legislation was a disaster. It wasn't going to be heard on the floor. It was totally gutted. And we made sure that super guardrails are put on this. Now, it's interesting how the Arizona Citizens Defense League PAC, and I think the guy who's running that PAC, his name is Drake Mitchell, how he's mischaracterizing this, which is really ironic because he was part of the CDL when this was being actually brought forward. And the Arizona Citizens Defense League president, Dave Kopp, he was actually involved in crafting the corrections of the bill that was finally heard on the Senate floor. And we didn't really even want to vote on that even then, because then we knew the Democrats were going to filibuster for 6 hours because they wanted to amend it to add in bump stocks and then high capacity magazines and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. And so it was completely gutted. Now, red flag, what's amazing, is the whole thing was designed for minors underage to be able to, identify somebody who's dangerous, mentally incompetent, poses a danger to others and themselves, and to actually protect schools. So here's the other thing. A minor cannot possess a firearm, okay, a handgun. Oh, an 18-year-old can get a rifle, sure. But in order for anybody to have their Second Amendment rights taken away, an adult, it has to be adjudicated through the courts. Now, that statute already exists now under Title 36 under mental incompetency, and you have to go through a legal process of adjudication to even have somebody's Second Amendment rights, or for that matter, incarcerated under a mental capacity type of thing. So when Steve Smith got a hold of this bill and he actually elevated it to where it was very limited on who could actually approach the courts on who a troubled teen is, the left, they wanted anybody that can bring it forward to a judge. They wanted school teachers, counselors, the neighbor, that kind of stuff. Well, Steve Smith made sure that we put tight guardrails on it and actually elevated this and actually tightened up the legislation that only a sworn police officer could bring evidence to a superior court, not a justice of the peace, a superior court. So now we have a higher court where the level of evidence is higher that has to be presented, and a sworn police officer has to be. Why a sworn police officer? Because they're licensed, they're certified, they have to give expert testimony, and they're sworn officers of the court. So therefore, they cannot lie on a search warrant or any kind of warrant for arrest or so on and so forth. So they're held to that higher standard. Steve Smith made sure that the standard was risen, not just a reasonable doubt, which is what you would use for conviction, but in order for them to gain any kind of access to the courts, for the court to impose anything. So beyond the preponderance of evidence that they had to propose to the court in a superior court. This was all elevated to a superior court. Now, a lot of people don't understand this, but on a justice of the peace, if you've got two brothers that get into an argument over football and the neighbors complain, or for that matter, not two brothers, just two guys that are sharing an apartment, and they're noisy and they make a bunch of noise and the police come because somebody complained, they can actually be charged for disorderly conduct. Well, guess what? Since they're cohabitating, that actually can be considered under the domestic violence statute, and one of them or both can be charged with a domestic violence crime, even for a misdemeanor, and therefore their Second Amendment rights can be suspended until the time is served or whatever, until it's expunged, or not expunged, but set aside by the court. That's on a justice of the peace. On a misdemeanor, we're talking felonies here on this thing they're calling the red flag law, and they're totally mischaracterizing it. And Drake Mitchell, he knows this. He was a part of the team that was actually helped crafting this language to whittle it down with Dave Kopp, who was the president of the Arizona Citizens Defense League. So, and then, by the way, in committee, AZCDL, they were against it. Well, they passed out of committee so that way we can try to fix this, because the governor was insistent on it, keeping it moving. So when it got whittled down and put so many guardrails on it, finally, the NRA was neutral on the bill, and so was the Arizona Citizens Defense League. And there's some more things that were part of that conversation that Steve Smith, which is actually Mark Finchem's seatmate at the time, I'm sure he'll elaborate because he knows, and I was there during these conversations on what Dave Kopp wanted to also put in the bill, but that got yanked out because it really opened up another can of worms that would have been counterproductive to anybody trying to protect their Second Amendment rights. Now, once again, key points: a minor under the age of 21 cannot possess a firearm, or excuse me, a handgun. An 18-year-old adult can possess a firearm. Once again, to take those rights away, you have to be adjudicated through the courts. And with now, like I said, under Title 36, what this bill was mostly in was tidying up the language on mental health, because what had happened in Florida, where a troubled teen was in school and he had a record and a reputation of being a troubled teen. And of course, then when he became 18, Now he's an adult, and then they went and shot up at school. Once again, we're talking about adults and minors. And so, and so if the police can bring something, evidence, Facebook posts, these kind of things, they have to really prove it to a judge that a judge needs to even set an incompetency hearing. Remember, key thing, an incompetency hearing before any action is done. They just cannot do this ex parte. They got to bring all parties in, and this has to be adjudicated through a superior court, not a justice of the peace, which is the lower court. So this got elevated to a higher court. And honestly, I believe the governor would probably have vetoed the bill in the first place. And when it got passed out of the Senate, got over to the House, it went to Eddie Farnsworth's committee, which Eddie Farnsworth is a really staunch, hard conservative. And, Steve Smith and Representative Eddie Farnsworth, they communicated and they said, you know what, this is not necessary. We already have existing statute. So Steve Smith held the bill. So actually Eddie Farnsworth held the bill on the sponsor's request. Now you got to remember, we went through a 6-hour filibuster in the Senate floor because the Democrats are trying to amend everything on there. Well, now it just came down to, if you vote no, now you're actually siding with the Democrats. So it became a major partisan issue, political issue, rather than what they're wanting to talk about was school safety. But the Democrats' arguments had nothing to do with school safety. They were reading off obituaries and stuff like that, dragging their feet and just creating a big ruckus for political gain, because the gallery was full of their left-wing activists there to support the Democrats for their grandstanding.
Sonny, I'd like to take a minute and reiterate. There's two key points about this. Number one, AZCDL for Drake Mitchell and his happy band of what I think are Democrat operatives are going after solid, proven conservatives like Judy Burgess, Sylvia Allen, Brenda Barton. These are individuals who have protected Second Amendment rights. In fact, all civil rights, not just Second Amendment. They've got a proven record of being probably some of the most conservative members of the House. So that begs the question, why would AZCDL or AZCDL's PAC misrepresent the history of that bill? The fact of the matter is, the original bill that was introduced by the governor was a non-starter. And I was there, present, when AZCDL said, we can't live with this. And Steve Smith stepped in, my seatmate at the time, as Senator Borelli has said, and said, well, okay, we agree with you. This can't be, but we would like to have your input, your suggestion, your wordsmithing, your crafting, your input into how this bill should be rewritten. And anybody who goes and inspects, that's a great thing about history. Only the left can change it. But in the Arizona legislature, you can go back and see the history of a bill. And you'll notice that on the Senate engrossed amended version, it says strike everything. That means the entire bill was replaced. Was what, 56 pages replaced with 12, Senator Borelli?
52 pages and down to 7.
Yeah, and the issue that disturbs me the most is the misrepresentation by the AZCDL PAC of the history of this bill. They had a hand in writing the language. So for them to now say, oh, well, these people voted on something that they shouldn't have voted on. Okay, slow down there, cowboy. There's an issue that's underlying all of this. Why is it that the AZCDL PAC, which by the way has been publicly disavowed by AZCDL, why is it that they are trying to misrepresent the history of that bill against solid conservatives who, by the way, once that bill passed out of the Senate and came to the House, AZCDL said, we'll support it now. That is a question that only AZCDL can answer. And I am absolutely outraged at people like Drake Mitchell and all of the people who are following him and disrupting the electoral process with misinformation. It'd be one thing, and it used to be that you could count on the AZCDL, by the way, I'm a life member. You could count on them for a truthful representation of legislation and where they stood on it. Now it appears not only are they waffling on what they originally supported, they're now going after members who stood with them. And I find that absolutely reprehensible. It makes me believe that the individuals who are taking this course are indeed probably operatives for the opposition. So I would urge anybody who has heard this, put on your critical thinking cap, exercise your critical thinking skills, and ask, why would it be that somebody who is a known supporter, particularly, conspicuously, of the Second Amendment, why would they fall under attack from an organization that allegedly promotes Second Amendment rights? That's the question for people to ask. And why has a bill that is there for everyone to see, everyone to read, why has the language in that bill also been misrepresented? I smell a rat.
And to that point, it's amazing that Brenda Barton, Sylvia Allen, and Judy Burgess have all stood here with us, shoulder to shoulder, during all the fights in the legislature on protecting a Second Amendment, getting berated, getting hate emails and phone calls and all kinds of stuff from the far left, stood there shoulder to shoulder, stood their ground to keep pushing and making sure that we protect the Second Amendment and tightening it up. Heck, Brenda Barton actually introduced a bill to make the six-shooter or the revolver the state gun. And, so these are the things. And even Sylvia Allen supported the constitutional carry, which means you don't have to have a license to carry a concealed weapon. So she was main supporter of that and strong fighter to make sure that it did pass. And this is another thing that's troubling. I met a gal earlier this year at the state party meeting. Her name is Myrna, and I forget her last name, but she was talking to Senator Karen Fann about this bill. And of course, I walked up and I was during the middle of the conversation, and I'm listening to her totally misrepresenting the bill because she's being fed something. And so Karen explained to her what the bill did. I explained to her what the bill did. I explained to her the difference between a justice of the peace and a superior court, how your Second Amendment, and I pointed to her husband. I says, sir, do you realize that your wife can go down and go to justice of the peace, get a restraining order on you and have all your guns confiscated until you get to go and have a hearing maybe 15 days later, and you completely bounce out of it without any due process, without any evidence, just an accusation that they feel in danger, they want to order protection. And then you go to court, and if you got some crazy justice of the peace, can actually impose your Second Amendment rights being suspended and your guns confiscated for at least up to a year under the Brady Act, even with no crime committed whatsoever. So these are the things that are very troubling. And after I explained that to her and gave her the facts, I'm really surprised and disappointed that this lady is still out there misrepresenting the bill, misrepresenting the representatives and the senators that are in the legislature, and for their rhetoric to say every senator that voted in favor of that bill should be removed. Well, guess what? I guess they're supporting the Democrats because all the Democrats voted no. It's amazing how our far right people, supposedly far right people, act just like the far left. It's appalling. It's disgraceful. And all we're doing is attacking other Republicans when we don't need to, especially the ones what I call the blooded veterans that have gone through all the battles here and actually had to fight for Arizona. It's really appalling and disgusting. Because let me tell you, Sylvia Allen, she's gonna be a stubborn lady at times and hard to deal with sometimes, but she is strong, solid conservative. Judy Burgess, strong, solid conservative, has been ranked one of the #1 conservatives here by the Goldwater Institute, the American Conservative Union, you name it, all of them, the NRA, everybody. And now all of a sudden she's being painted as a liberal. That's just totally mind-blowing. And Brenda Barton, let me tell you, that little short lady is one tough gal, and she always fights for her constituents first, not the party, her constituents first, and then it's the party, that kind of thing. So, but we stick together. We do not let these Democrats divide us. Why should these so-called wannabe conservatives and act like they're the most purest people on the planet? Why in the heck are they doing this? Because all they're doing is helping the opposition. Because you take out an incumbent with somebody that's a non-incumbent, and guess what? Now you leave the general election wide open. Folks, we are at a critical juncture here. We are 31 Republicans in the House and 17 Republicans in the Senate. All we got to do is lose one vote, one seat in the House of Representatives, and we're done. The Democrats will control the House. If we hopefully we maintain the majority here in the Senate, great. However, we can't count on some of our Republican colleagues here that live in the Valley to stick to their Republican roots, because we had 3 Republicans jump ship and vote with the Democrats to kill the session, which killed 28 bills, which is really disgusting. You know, and that was over a procedural vote on sine die. Yeah, and that was just flat out wrong. But this is what, so you can't even rely on some folks here, like Heather Carter. Heather Carter was one of the ones that jumped over the Democrats to kill the entire session. We got to support Nancy Bartow to come back to the Senate. She didn't give up her seat. She did that as a courtesy because Heather Carter was turned out in the House and they swapped. Okay, well, Heather Carter, her record on how she's acted in the House of Representatives since I've been in the legislature for 8 years, of always siding with the Democrats, rolling the Republican caucus every chance she gets for more spending funding for universities and all kinds of things like that. And actually, this last budget, when we were trying to do the skinny budget because of COVID-19, we were trying to get things done and set things up for the state. Let's get down a very minimal budget as best we can to keep the state floating, because we don't know what's going to happen as far as the state economics go. And up until 10 minutes for us going on the Senate floor to pass out that budget, she was working with the Democrats up until 10 minutes prior to us going and gaveling in. That's the kind of stuff that we don't need here. Those are the people that need to be replaced. Not Brenda Barton, not Sylvia Allen, and definitely not Judy Burgess. We're talking hard line, stand your ground, fight for the Second Amendment, fight for your rights. These are solid conservatives. Then they don't waver. They're not cowards. They're courage. I spent 22 years in the Marine Corps. I know what courage looks like, and they are it. Improve your net, hire a vet. Anyway, is there another question? I know we ramble on, but that's what you get when you talk to politicians.
What happened to Mark?
He'll come back on.
Okay, because I had a question for him.
Okay.
He's probably had another phone call, which is another thing I want to reiterate. People think that once we sine die and we're no longer in session, that we stop working. And that's the funny thing.
Sorry about that. Do you have a question for me?
Yeah, I wanted a clarification there.
Sure.
You have stated that the Citizens Defense League PAC has now been disavowed by the main group. Is that what I'd heard from you?
That's what I've been told by Dave Kopp, who is with the AZCDL, that the AZCDL PAC, in fact, AZCDL has come out a number of times and said, we don't endorse candidates. We don't play in the political game anymore. We are no longer operating a PAC. Well, the fact is that they severed their relationship with the AZCDL PAC, but that PAC is now run by an individual who does not represent the interests of AZCDL, because AZCDL has already said we've disavowed these guys. There's money in the PAC. So what we have is, again, I'm going to call, if it walks like a duck, it's got feathers, quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. The fact that these individuals are going after proven conservatives, we're not talking about people that just came in like Wendy Rogers, for example. She's run in 3 different congressional races and gotten her clock cleaned every single time. But the fact that she is challenging Sylvia Allen, who is a long-standing conservative, with out-of-state dark money, I mean, who runs? This is all about power, okay? The fact that there's $300,000 being poured into a race where somebody's paid 24 grand, this is about power. This is not about anything, and quite frankly, I would say conspicuously.
Comments.
This appears to be about a personal agenda. The fact that repetitive races, excuse me, my allergies are getting the better of me. The fact that AZCDL has disavowed the organization, the PAC, I think speaks volumes to the lack of integrity that's being displayed in this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So we hear that there's a real chance that the Arizona legislature could change from conservative to liberal. Is this really possible, and why?
It's very possible, because when we have folks who are so busy about taking out conservatives, who exactly do they think is going to replace them? I mean, that's an absurd notion to say that I'm going to take out somebody like a Sylvia Allen and replace him with somebody who's an unknown quantity. Really? I would say that somebody's calculator is wrong on that political calculus. And I don't mean to pick on the Sylvia Allen, Wendy Rogers race, but I mean, it's a shining example. Another one you've got is misinformation about Judy Burgess. I've worked with Judy for 6 years, and I purposely haven't endorsed anybody in that race, by the way, because I don't endorse people in a primary. But what I'm calling out is the fact that you've got people who are playing in races where they're replacing individuals who have a proven record with unknown quantities. And that's a very dangerous game, because when you start to impugn the character of Republicans, I'm a Ronald Reagan Republican, by the way. What's the 11th commandment? Do no harm to your, this is paraphrased, but do no harm to your Republican, your fellow Republican. It's one thing to have a debate. It's another thing to destroy that individual. And I think that that's what makes me, these are the tactics that Saul Alinsky uses, by the way. So that's what reveals to me that you've got individuals, and I'm going to say his name again, Drake Mitchell. If you happen to see this, knock it off. You are employing the same tactics that the left employs. So guilt by association tells me that you're aligned with some really bad folks who are about one thing, and that is flipping Arizona blue. So conservatives got to get off the couch. They need to call their friends on voting day. And I would urge you, don't mail your ballot in. If you're on the Pebble list, do not mail your early ballot in. Go to the polls and submit it in person, because then you know it makes it's going to make the trip. Across the United States, we have seen story after story of ballot box stuffing, of interception of ballots in the mail. This whole initiative by when the Democrats want something so bad that that's all they talk about, you ought to be raising your eyebrows and thinking something's suspicious here. Well, the number thing they want is what? Mandatory mail-in ballots. That's probably not a good idea.
Senator Borelli?
Especially when you got the U.S. Postal Service. I mean, we had in Mojave County last election, and they had like 6,000 some odd ballots that were still in Las Vegas. Because if you mail in a ballot from Lake Havasu, it goes to Las Vegas and then goes back into the Kingman, which is the county seat. So we know ballots have been lost. There's been stories all across the nation where ballots have been found on the side of the road because the letter carriers dumped them. I sent you the chat link. I did a cut and paste of an email I got we all got from Dave Kopp that specifies how they've severed, make sure they reiterate they severed any relationship with the Arizona Citizens Defense League PAC. But it's really appalling. You got people that want to claim they're conservatives, like that gal Myrna. We explained to her the issue about this, that Senate Bill 1519. And of course, Rose Sperry and Jim Dutton, they've been explained this. And it's just amazing that they continue to go down this road of trying to paint everybody as a rhino and a liberal and all this other garbage, when they need to really look in the mirror and figure out who in the heck are they helping and who are they hurting. So, you know, we don't generally start bad mouthing other Republicans you're right, during a primary, the Reagan's 11th rule. But I'm really angry about Heather Carter because, you know, what she did this last time was a procedural issue on sine die, that the Democrats made a motion to sine die to kill the session. Over a procedural matter, you stick with your caucus. These are the things that everybody's upset with. You know, you won't want to vote no on a bill, that's fine, that's your prerogative, you don't like it or whatever, but whatever, that's how it goes. Yeah, I cut and pasted this out of our legislative emails. It says, legislators, FYI, this has been sent to 65,000 people on our email alert last night. We reiterate our emphasis: AZCDL does not endorse any candidate or for public office or get involved in any elections, and they specify any. We are no longer associated with any political action committee. Those are the people you donate money to, and they get out there and they send out checks. Nor any political committee or candidate for office have our permission to use our name or logo. Thank you. Regards, sincerely, Dave Kopp, President of the Arizona Citizens Defense League, Incorporated. So once again, Drake Mitchell is out there misrepresenting his position and the organization. He does not speak for the Arizona Citizens Defense League, and the AZCDL does not endorse candidates or make PAC contributions. So obviously they're not getting involved in these things, you know. So once again, the proof is in the pudding. You know, it's always said in court, if a witness is caught in one lie, should the rest of their testimony be considered a lie? Absolutely, because they can't be trusted. And what I can say, we can back up in paper because it's all public record. It's all legal public record.
How do we stop it from going blue, the state legislature?
Every Republican needs to get out there and they need to vote. Every independent needs to realize that they've all been lied to and bamboozled. They need to come back to the Republican Party. Every Democrat needs to wake up. You know, John Kennedy could not be elected president as a Democrat today. I'm sorry, it ain't going to happen. He is not progressive, socialist, communist leaning. He never was. He would never get elected as a Democrat today. The Democratic Party always wants to rebrand themselves, but they still cannot hide their segregationist roots and you know, their communist socialist tactics. I mean, their playbook is Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, Cloward and Piven, collapse the system. Every Republican needs to get out there and they need to vote. Don't get discouraged about what you're reading in the newspaper. The media, 99% of it is, I'm sorry, corrupted. They'll write one article and they all jump on the bandwagon, regurgitate it. And I'm surprised they're not accusing each other of plagiarism, but they all go out there and regurgitate somebody else's article, put their own little spin on it, and it just gets spun out all over the place. And it looks like, oh my God, this is rampant all over the place, but it's not. It's all isolated stuff. It's an isolated lie, and it gets perpetrated and perpetuated by that source. And, you know, so the media, you really can't believe. What did Mark Twain said? If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you read it, you're misinformed. So folks, really get in there and start doing your own investigating. Call your representative and find out actually what's going on. Don't read the blogs. A lot of people have a different agenda. Most of the bloggers out there don't even use their real name on social media. I mean, so come on, consider the sources, who wins, who loses, don't be played. You know, where I grew up, you know, I learned if you're at the poker table more than 15 minutes and you can't figure out who the mark is, you're it.
I've not heard that one. Okay, and then one of my last questions is, can you share with us what critical issues will be facing the legislature if it reconvenes in January?
Well, if we reconvene in January and we have the majority, there's going to be a lot of things we're going to be fixing on tightening up the governor's authority for sure. What he's been doing on what we feel has been really a misuse of power. But right now, currently, the thing that's been going around the blogosphere and social media is that we need to sign a petition to go into a special session. All the legislators need to sign in for a special session. Let me explain how that works. Okay, this is a numbers game at the legislature. It takes 20 votes in the Senate and 40 votes in the House, or people to get on this petition for this legislature to be called into a special session. Now, you know the makeup. There's 31 Republicans in the House, 17 Republicans in the Senate. That means we need to have Democrats sign on board with that petition. The Democrats have emphatically said no, they're not going to, which is amazing. Why wouldn't they want to overthrow and override and not take the opportunity to override a Republican governor? You would think that that'd be a nice coup for them, because then they could say, we just rolled the governor. No, they have another agenda. And they're trying to use that leverage that if we call it, if we want their help to come in for a special session, this is when their agenda is the BLM agenda, defund the police, schools to remain closed until the end of the year, but they could do online learning and be teachers being paid in full, and a whole laundry list of the progressive agenda. And what that opens, so let's just say we did have a special session, and we did say, let's just say the governor calls us in for a special session. That will give the platform, literally handing the Democrats a platform and a green light to make all the protests that were done in Phoenix look like romper room. Because they will come down here, the Red for Ed thing a couple years ago, that was chaotic, okay? 1070 was chaotic. This is the time right now where they're pushing, and they would love to have that platform to come down here right before a general election and do all the Antifa, BLM protests and all this other crazy stuff that they're going to. This is what they want. They know this is critical. They're pushing what their way in. You know, the Democrats are not about dialogue. They're all about destruction. You know, at least Republicans, we try to get results. So I say our Republican, the R is results. Democrat is destruction and distraction and distortion and deception. So I can go on. There's a lot of D words I can come up with. But this is what they want. This is what they want. And they want to disrupt even the general election because they know this is the time to take the state blue and to make sure that Donald Trump does not get Arizona. And they want that platform. We do not need to take their bait. We do not need to go play right into their hands. We need to, you know, we've been working with the governor, the Senate leadership, House leadership, are working with the governor on trying to loosen up things within the state. And we're working within the system to go out and you know, berate our Republican governor publicly, plays right into the Democrats' hands. Once again, we shouldn't be doing that. We need to work within the system and let the governor know, hey, we maintain the majority. You need us next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like we've lost Mark Finchem.
He's probably on the phone again.
Well,
things around here. Yes, sometimes we're juggling chainsaws and cats, but no cats have been harmed.
be careful there. Okay, well, I think we covered everything I had wanted to pretty clearly, and we're coming up on an hour right now. So someone let the representative know that I enjoy talking to him and I enjoy talking to you, Senator. And thanks for your time. We know how busy everyone is.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity. We need to set the record straight that there's a lot of lies going out there, which is really atrocious. It shouldn't be happening. It just shouldn't be. In a critical time when we're ready to lose this state and this country, we don't need to be fighting amongst ourselves.
I totally agree. All right, well, thank you so much from E-News, and hopefully we'll get a chance to see you up here in studio at some point.
Yes, love to come up to Prescott all the time.
Okay, well, it's cooler up here and we're having rain, so.
Well, that's true. I live in Lake Havasu, so you know it's this is how you gauge how you're going to go outside in Lake Havasu. You look out your window. If you see a lizard walking across the pavement going ouch, 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 you stay in the house. And go to the pool.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, I used to live down in Phoenix. I was a librarian at Arizona State University, so I well know the heat factor. Okay, well, thanks so much and hope to see you later.